Hi there. Today we read chapter 6 of Enid Blyton's The Land of Far Beyond. Yes, it is a children's book, but I find revisiting and rereading this is not only nostalgic but still very readable. I do hope you enjoy it as much. Now, in the last chapter, the 8 that are still going in search of the City of Happiness reunite, having managed to get away from Mrs. Daly and Mr. Doubt, who filled them with stories that wasted their time. Now, the 5 children and 3 grown-ups are ready to march on. But before we continue, if you have landed here without watching the previous chapters, please do so before continuing. Welcome to my space of make-believe. With just words, we shall weave places and people, adventures surreal. I am Tell a Story, and this is an invitation to come with me. Chapter 6. The Guide's Cottage. Greed and Spite. The fierce dogs and Dame Dread. The youth called Bold, Dame Friendly. A pleasant surprise awaited everyone. When they left the little cave in which they had spent the night, the mist blew away suddenly. The children gave loud cries of surprise and joy. "Why, we're almost at the top of the hill! Look, look! Another 10 minutes climb and we'll be there! How marvelous! We must have climbed up higher in the night than we guessed." "And see, there is a hut!" cried Peter. "It must be the guide's. Why, we were so near that if we had shouted for help, he would have heard us and come. Hurry, hurry! Maybe he will give us some breakfast." Even Gracie Grumble forgot to sigh and moan and hastened up the little winding path, half forgetting the heaviness of her burden. The little hut looked gay and welcoming in the early morning sun. It was built of stone that glinted and shone, and the diamond-paned windows gleamed gold where the sun's rays caught them. Smoke rose from the chimneys, and somebody was singing a song beyond the house. "That must be the guide," said Peter, and he gave a shout. An answering cry came from behind the house, and someone came hurrying round. At first the children thought it must be the wanderer again, for this man was dressed exactly the same, and he had the same happy, shining look in his eyes and on his face. Then they saw that he was a little different, not so tall, and with a more peaceful look in his eyes than the wanderer had had. He came to greet them. "I thought at first you were the wanderer," said Anna in surprise. "He is my brother," said the guide, smiling at her. "We are very alike. How tired and hungry you all look. You must come and rest, and feast your eyes on my view." Then, for the first time, the travelers saw the view over the other side of the hill, towards the west, their eyes strained to a gleaming country far beyond, a country whose great towers glittered in the sun, a land that seemed magical and enchanted, full of mystery and beauty. "You can see the City of Happiness from here," said the guide. "There are its towers." "Are all the people happy there?" asked Patience. "Have they shining faces like you and Wanderer?" "Of course," said the guide. "Their hearts are at peace because there is nothing but kindness and love there. Those things shine out from anyone's eyes. I hope they will shine from yours when you reach there. If they do not, you will not be allowed to stay." "Oh," said Anna, looking round at the others to see if any of them had shining eyes and happy faces. But not one of them had. They all looked tired and strained, and on the faces of the grown-ups were ugly lines and wrinkles, put there by discontent and selfishness. Everyone stood gazing at the land of far beyond. Then they saw what lay between, an ugly, desolate country stretched between the hill and the far-off land. Hills reared up their heads, marshes lay wreathed in mist, swift rivers raced along, and rocky stretches were spread for miles. "So that is the country we must cross," said Peter. "I don't like it. It will be hard. It is always hard to win anything that is really worthwhile, said the guide. He took them into a sunny living room and set out food on the table there. Everyone was terribly hungry. Even Mr. Scornful did not turn up his nose this time. He fell to which as much appetite as anyone else. Dick Cowardly and Gracie Grumble had had their bruises soothed with ointments, and they were feeling much better. "I wish Miss Simple was here," said Peter. "It seems funny without her." "It was a pity that she went to Mr. Doubt's," said Mr. Scornful. "She always believed everything she was told. Poor creature. Never used her brain. Ah, well, I suppose she's halfway back to the City of Turmoil now. It's funny. I didn't at all mind living there, but now when I think of it, I hate the idea." "You must all rest after your meal," said the guide. "Then I will tell you the best way to get to the land of Far Beyond, and give you a map to show you the way." "Thank you," said Mr. Scornful, stretching himself and yawning. "Well, I must say I could do with a good nap after our wakeful night. It's a mercy we haven't all got chills." Some of the company rested out in the sunny garden. Gracie Grumble lay on the guide's bed. Mr. Scornful stretched himself out in the only comfortable chair in the hut. Everyone slept soundly on the hilltop, feeling the cool breeze blowing round and seeing the view whenever they opened their sleepy eyes. Peter and the others turned themselves about to see the City of Turmoil that lay on the other side of the hill to the east. It seemed dreadful after the shining city that lay to the west. Heavy clouds hung over it, and the city looked dark, smoky, and ugly. Peter shivered. "Fancy, we lived in that dark, ugly place," he said, "and yet we were so used to it that we never noticed how ugly it was." "I hope we never go back," said Anna, and Patience agreed. Later on in the morning, the guide told them the way they must go. "You must climb down this hill," he said, "and keep to the narrow way that will lead you safely over the rough country to the west. You will meet many of the people who live between here and Far Beyond, but do not be tempted to turn aside from them. And do not be afraid of any dangers or difficulties you come to. Face them, and they will grow small. Run away, and they will come after you." He turned to Mr. Scornful. "You, sir, will have to be careful to be content with simple things and not to go chasing riches or power. You must not scorn others for stupidity or kindliness. If you do, you will lose your way and never reach the City of Happiness." "Now, don't try to teach me things I've heard since I was in the cradle," said Mr. Scornful impatiently. "I know what's what. I know that there isn't much happiness without money and power. I am happy, and I have neither," said the guide, his eyes gleaming as he looked at Mr. Scornful. "Well, you must go your own way and learn your own lessons." He turned to the children again. "Keep together and help one another," he said. "As long as you are on the narrow way, you are safe, and nothing can harm you. See that you do not stray from it." "Very well," said Peter, and he took up his staff. "We'd better start right away. Do you think, sir, that we might take a little food with us?" "Of course," said the guide, and he began to pack up bread and cheese, and some fruit to quench their thirst on the way. "I will take you down the hill myself." They all set off together. It was almost as tiring going down the hill as up. "My feet will keep wanting to run down, and I daren't let them in case I wouldn't be able to stop," said Anna. The guide took them right down to the bottom of the hill. It was a good thing he did, for the way was very overgrown, and the little company might easily have missed it if they had gone by themselves. At the foot, the guide said goodbye, and the children waved to him as they set off along the narrow winding path he had pointed out to them. "Well, it seems quite easy," said Patience, as they all walked along in single file. "If all we have to do is to walk along like this, it shouldn't be more than a day or two before we reach the land of Far Beyond. Didn't it look lovely from the top of the hill?" "We can't see it from here, now that we're down in the valley," said Peter. "What a pity! It would have helped us along if we had been able to look up and see it." For an hour or two, the 8 people trudged along in the morning sun. It was now rising high, and would soon be at its greatest height in the sky. The children panted with the heat. "Let's eat some of our fruit," said Anna. "I'm so thirsty." They sat down in the shade of a big tree. As they undid the packets of fruit and bread, Anna caught sight of the heads of 2 children peeping round a tree not far off. "Who are they?" she said in wonder. "What horrid faces they've got!" Everyone looked as the 2 children came near. One was very fat, and his little piggy eyes were half buried in the folds of his cheeks. The other had a mean, spiteful face, and he licked his lips as he saw the food that the little group were eating. "Give us some," said the fat boy, whose name was Greed. The other boy, who was called Spiteful, made a grab at John's fruit. John wasn't in time to save it, and the boy crammed most of it into his mouth at once. He grinned spitefully at the angry boy and gave him a hard pinch before running off. The other boy snatched up a bag in which was some cheese that the guide had given the travelers. He crammed his mouth full too, and then, as Mr. Scornful, John and Peter rose to their feet in anger, he took to his heels and raced away. Peter tore after the 2 boys. He was a fast runner, and was not going to let the 2 mean boys go free without a punishment. "Come back!" shouted Mr. Scornful. "You will lose us if you go too far." "Peter, you know what the guide said. We weren't to leave the path," cried Anna. So Peter came back annoyed that Greed and Spite had got away. "I'll jolly well look out for them and go for them if they come back again," he said fiercely. "I expect we shall meet all kinds of queer folk on our way," said Dick cowardly. "The guide said we should." "And do you remember what Mr. Doubt said?" said Anna. "He told us about the giant's castle and the tunnel of disgust. There must be heaps of strange things in this desolate country." They set off again and walked until the sun was halfway down the sky. Then they felt very tired, for their burdens always seemed heaviest towards the end of the day. "Where do you think we can pass the night?" asked Patience. "Did the guide tell you?" "He marked a place on the map he gave me," said Mr. Scornful, unrolling the big map. "Yes, here it is, a house called Restful, owned by a Dame Friendly. It should be quite near here." Everyone felt glad. They began to look around for the house. After a while, John spied it, half hidden among some trees. "There it is," he said. "It looks a nice welcoming sort of place too. There are lights in the windows already, although it is not really dark." As they drew near the house, some dogs set up a great barking, and the children saw that 4 fierce dogs were roaming to and fro in the garden. Everyone halted. "I don't like the look of those," said Patience, trembling. "Look at their teeth. I shouldn't think that this can be Dame Friendly's house, if she keeps fierce dogs like that," said Anna. "I don't dare to open the gate," said Dick cowardly. "I simply don't dare." "Well, I got so pulled about by dogs the night before last that I don't feel inclined to face them either," said Mr. Scornful. "I think we'd better go on." "Well, it really does look as if this should be the house," said Peter, looking at the map. "Shall I go up to the door and ask? Maybe if I said good dog, they wouldn't bite me." An old woman, covered in a dirty grey cloak, came up the way beside them, tap-tapping with her stick. She stopped and looked at the company. "I am Dame Dread," she said. "Don't you go near those dogs. Come with me, and I'll hide you before they come leaping over the wall." Dick cowardly went over to Dame Dread at once. "I'll go with you," he said, his teeth chattering. "Do you live near here? Could you put me up for the night?" "Well, I'm not very pleasant company," said Dame Dread, grinning at Dick and showing her toothless gums. "But if you like to hide in my cellar, you're welcome." Poor Dick cowardly went off with Dame Dread. "I wouldn't have gone with her," said Lily. "What a horrid old woman she looked." "Well, we're no better off than we were," said Gracie Grumble, looking after Dick as if she had half a mind to follow him. I don't know which would be the better thing to do, sleep in that grey old dame's cellar all night, or face being bitten by the dogs." A youth came up the path, whistling. He carried a basket of washing on his shoulder. He went up to the gate and opened it. "Hey, you! Mind those dogs!" cried Peter. The youth, whose name was Bold, grinned back at Peter. "Come and look," he cried. "They are all on long chains. They can't get at you." And sure enough, he was right. The fierce dogs each had long chains that prevented them from reaching the path that led up to the house. Bold went up to the door and delivered his washing. Mr. Scornful looked ashamed of himself. He went up the path too, followed by Gracie and the children, while the dogs all barked madly. "Lie down! Lie down!" cried a voice, and the children saw a kindly-faced woman at the door. Surely it must be Dame Friendly. It was, and a nicer person could surely never be found anywhere. What a fuss she made of the children! How she laughed when they told her they had been so frightened of her dogs. "Bless us all! I keep them to frighten away robbers and thieves, not harmless folk like you," she said. "Now see, I've meat pies hot in the oven and cocoa boiling in the pot. Help yourselves. Put down your burdens for a while." But that no one could do much as they wanted to. It was quite impossible. They sat and ate, wondering how poor Dick Cowardly was getting on. In the morning, they met him again on the road. He was grey with fear, for he was quite certain that all the others had been eaten by the dogs. He was amazed to see them walking along happily together, talking about the pleasant night they had had at Dame Friendly's. "I spent the night in a damp, dark cellar, listening for the dogs," he said. "Dame Dread told me the most awful stories about them, and about all the dangers on this road. I didn't sleep a wink. I just couldn't. I shivered and shook, and every time a beetle ran over my foot, I yelled." "Poor Dick Cowardly," said Peter. "You do fill yourself up with fears and frights, and you don't need to." "Now, we've a good long way to go today," said Mr. Scornful, looking at his map. "If we travel fast, we should come to the House of Peace tonight. But we pass all kinds of queer places on the way. Look, that is the wood of deceit, and here is the marsh of dishonesty, with stepping stones of truth going through it. We don't go near it, really. Our path keeps well to the north." "Well, for goodness sake, let's all keep together," said Gracie Grumble, looking at Dick. "Don't go wandering off with dirty old dames and sleeping in cellars that make you smell musty, Cousin Dick." The end of chapter 6. That's the thing about assuming. Always best to make sure and not give in to fears. Good thing the lad Bold came along. We should all have a little bit of that. Well, I sure would like a lot of it. Can't wait to see what happens in this strange country with all kinds of distractions to deviate the group. If you would like to read this book, search it up online as it is in the public domain. Otherwise, please join me in the next chapter. I would love to have you for company. Till the next time, go grab yourself a book, read, and let your imagination take you anywhere. Be anyone and do anything. And do share your reads in the comments. Would love to know. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.